Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. God is good. God was able to wake us up this morning to see another Lord's Day. I'm sorry I didn't get to didn't preach last Sunday. I didn't do Facebook Live last Sunday because I had to go to a funeral last week to bury my godpops. That was upon me preaching this sermon 2 weeks ago. That we on borrowed time, and that was retained to him because I had to go. We had to lay him to rest last week. Larry Eugene Owens. But the sermon I was really supposed to preach 2 weeks ago was I'm going to do it today. And I'm not going to keep you here long because I'm getting ready to go to worship service myself. And it's going to come out of 2 Corinthians, and I'm going to start at and read chapter 10. I'm going to start at 12, and we're going to hint at 17. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, and we're going to read verse 12, and we're going to stop at 17. And it reads like this: For we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. We, however, will not boast about beyond measure, but within the limits of the spirit which God appointed us, a spirit which especially includes you. Verse 14, for we not or extending ourselves as our authority did not extend you, for it was to you that we came with the gospel of Christ. Verse 15, not boasting of things beyond measure that is in other man's labors, but having hope that as your faith is increased, we shall be greatly enlarged by you in our spare. Verse 16, to preach the gospel in the region beyond you, and not to boast in another man's spare of accomplishment. Verse 17, but he who is glorious, let him glory in the Lord, for not who commands himself approve of whom the Lord commands. My topic is going to be this morning is being jealous in a toxic environment. Being jealous in a toxic environment. The reason why this world is so corrupt, before I go into my sermon, is because a lot of us, it is too much. Everybody want to compete and get into the politics of life. Which that's been said is, what that means is that instead of living life right, instead of living in the Lord's will, we want to live the politics of life. The politics part of life, which meaning is we try to compete with the flesh instead of trying to live in the will of the spirit, which is that we want money, power, greed, and fame, and we want to be better than that person. The only one is a jealous God is God. Is God himself. Man should never have this thing. He should be jealous. And the problem is, man is jealous of God. And that's why the flesh is so corrupt. Because this person, a man trying to make himself more than he really is by putting himself on these pedestals. And people get caught up in this media hype and attention when it comes to a name, a last name, and money and fame. But I preached these in my past sermons before, that this will not get you nowhere in this life. Because when your expiration date is up, when you're not on this borrowed time anymore, guess what? You get that flesh, that jealousy of that flesh got the answer to our maker. When our body go cold, we need to understand that I dealt with stuff like this on my job and other places where you got folks that are jealous of you. Why? I don't know why. Because that jealousy comes from being insecure about within of themselves. When people sit there and go around boasting about themselves, they're not what they think they are. They got insecurities. They try to make themselves more than what they really is. And that's what the devil does. He seeks attention. And people that are jealous seeks attention. And they got to make themselves more than they really is. And they don't understand that that's not a good look. And we all got the answer to God when it's time to cross over. My first point that I want to get across is that Paul boasts only within the spirit of ministry of God has given him. Which that's been said is that the spirit includes the Corinthians by implications. Paul critics were boasting of what they had not worked out, cultivate out the result of Paul's ministry in Corinthians. The problem of the matter is we try to compete with each other. I deal with that all the time. It doesn't matter. People don't want to see you do good in this life. You can do good in this life, and people are going to always try to find a way to knock you off by discouraging you and try to discredit everything that you do. That's why I understand. That's why you get the more I get motivated when people say things about me. They talked about Jesus. Why? Because Jesus sat at the table with the sinners and tax collectors. And they said, why are you sitting at the table with the sinners and tax collectors? He said, why? Because it's not the healed that need to be fed, it's the sick. It is those that are sitting at the table that are jealous. It is those that are sitting at the table that are boasting. It is those that are sitting at the table that are envying. That's why Jesus sat at the table. Although they talked about him, but at the end of the day, he still sat there and told them with kindness. He still sat there and greeted the word to them. People, you're always being watched. People are going to talk about you. You can't worry about what folks say. People are going to say this and that. They talk about me because of the success the Lord had blessed me with. But my point I'm saying is, before I go to my second point, is that when you've been jealous in a toxic environment, it leads to a toxic environment. And this is a jealous world that we live in. We are living in a toxic environment. We wake up every day and leave our house. We're dealing with intoxication all the time. We're dealing with jealousy all the time. People don't want to see you do good. It doesn't matter how good of a person you is. It doesn't matter how good that you do in this life. That people are always going to try to find a way to knock you off your high horse. But all I want to say is that you keep doing what you're doing. You keep doing the Lord's will. God's going to bless you. If God's for you, who can be against you? It ain't what man say. It's Philippians 4:13. If God's for you, who can be against you? You can do all things through Christ who gave you strength. Philippians 4:13. Don't worry about what the jealous man did on the left-hand side. Worry about what the spirit, the inner spirit of the man of Jesus Christ. It says on the right-hand side. Because if he's for you, don't worry about who's against you. People's going to be jealous of what you do. If you get a nice house, or blessed with a nice car, or blessed with a good job, people are going to find a way to try to discredit you. But my point I'm saying is, make sure you stay in your lanes. Make sure you stay humble, because what God gave you, He can take from you. And when your expiration date is up, you're not going to take none of this stuff with you. Now, but when I go into my second point is that the regions beyond you is the book of Romans, which Paul wrote around this time. He said in ambition that was to preach the gospel. In Romans chapter 15, verse 24, we need to understand that Paul's critics boasted about what they had not worked out, cultivated, and perhaps the result of Paul's ministry. We need to understand, we need to preach the gospel no matter where, even in a toxic environment, because people are going to be against what you do. People are jealous of the words being preached because they don't want to hear the truth. The truth will set you free. When people don't want to hear the truth, when the word of the gospel is being preached, they feel they're stepping on their toes. But God is not a popularity contest. Being jealous is a popularity contest. Popularity contest is a sin when it comes to God. God is not a popularity contest. God doesn't show favoritism. God doesn't boast about nothing. When God descended His Son down the cross was 2,000 years ago, He didn't boast about that. He died to pay away for us, to get through jealousy. The devil was a jealous devil that he was. That's why he was in heaven. That's why he was kicked out of heaven. And that's Lucifer, because he was jealous of God. He wanted everything that God has. My point I'm saying is, and he using that through the flesh of man, because that's why man is a jealous man to this day, because he wants everything that God has. But we got to understand, we could never have everything that God has. He gave us more than what we needed, and that was His Son who died on the cross for us 2,000 years ago. We need to understand there's a jealous world that we live in. When I wake up 3:30 in the morning and I go to this job, I deal with this intoxication of this job, of folks looking at you on the job because you You're doing a good job. But it's always, as long as you know the Lord is watching over you, as long as you know you got your peers who walks around and say good things about you, like management and other folks, that's all that matters. But when people that's outside the box, outside the wheel, is going to try to throw you off your high horse, and stuff gets back to me all the time. But people are going to talk about you. They talk about Jesus. If you don't do nothing else here today, if I'll tell you nothing else here today, don't worry about what the inner man say. You just keep doing what you're doing. Look up high. When you look up high, you look up high and know you got a powerful God. But God is more powerful than a jealous man. It's a jealous man. You can't worry about the jealous man, because the jealous man is dealing with his inner soul himself. He is not right himself. He want to run around and boast about what he has, what he really don't has. But God has ways of humbling you. When you fall in your face, he has a way of humbling you. That's why when you being blessed, you make sure you stay in your lanes. You don't try to boast about what you got, because everything that you has, it doesn't matter what you have, because God can take it from you. Because when you take that last breath, when you're going the other side, when it's time to cross over, when the expiration date ends, when you're not on this borrowed time anymore, you can't take none of this stuff with you. Never think you're better than that person. Never think you got more than what you really has. Because when you do that, you really look foolish when you do that. That's what the devil wants. He tried it in heaven. God kicked him out of heaven because he wanted everything that God has. The devil knows everything more than we do. He knows everything, and then he knows our weaknesses. And that's why they try to attack our weaknesses through the flesh. That's why we better be careful what we say, and we got to be careful when we get blessed. When we get blessed, we need to give God the glory and thank God for what he done and what he gave us. Because at the end of the day, all this stuff is temporary stuff. And my last point is the environment, the toxic environment that we in. We need to understand when we in this toxic environment, when we hear people boast, but we need to ignore it. We need to pray for them, because at the end of the day, you don't want that stuff to rub off on you, because once it rub off on you, it's going to knock you off your high horse, and you're going to get caught up in that stuff. When you become When you come hang around that environment, you're gonna become part of that environment. That's simple. When you're gonna become part of the problem. You're gonna come to the environment, and then you're not gonna realize, and then you're gonna start saying stuff or doing stuff, and you're gonna start doing stuff outside the will of God. Never boast about what you have. Never think you more than what you really is. Never look down on a person. Never think that you better than the next man, because no one is better than that person. We all need to uplift one another. Before I get out here, we all need to encourage one another. We need to all pray for one another, because you never know, someone needs to be a word of encouragement. The problem is, a jealous person is not going to encourage. A jealous person is going to discourage, because deep down inside they're crying out with their insecurities, because they want what you have that they don't have. And I got some of my job that's trying to knock me off my high horse, because I earned where I earned being a trainer, a good trainer on my job. I came a long way. I've been through obstacles in life. No one can tell me nothing about what I went through. No one can tell me anything, because I shouldn't be here to this day. But it's the grace of God that got me where I'm at. It's the grace of God that when I started that job, January 3rd, 2018, next month, me 5 years, a half a decade, I didn't think I was going to make it in that job. I didn't know how to ride a forklift. I struggled on that job. I was borderline. I didn't thought I was going to get walked out. But now, guess what? I'm now not only one of the top players on my job, but I am one of the top trainers on my job. Became a trainer. With that being said, folks on the job are jealous of that, and on my job, and folks outside of work is jealous of what you're doing, like in general. But at the end of the day, I stay in my lanes. I continue to do what I do. I do the will of God. And the discouraging part is, a jealous person will try to knock you off your high horse to get your position, and that's scary. That is a sin. And then you got to be careful who you let in your box. You got to be careful who you sell your friends, because everybody really your friends are really your foes. Those who you try to get close, those saying keep your friends and your enemy closer, which means you got to be careful who you let in your box, because all your friends all your friends are really, some of your friends, a lot of your friends are really your foes. They only get close to you for a reason, because they want what you have. And I relate to that. When you think they're for you, they're really against you. They just want you to be there for them, to make themselves get the credit of what you do. That's why you got to be careful. You got to pray. God will show you who a jealous person is. God will show you who an envy person is. Envy is a sin. Jealous is a sin. Boasting is a sin. And that's the problem with the media. And all these celebrities, they boast about what they got. You got people like Floyd Mayweather, who is the richest boxer ever, who is under 50-something in boxing. And he boasts about his money. He boasts about all his houses. He boasts about his car. But at the end of the day, when his time comes, we all got the answer to God. And we can't take none of this stuff with us. That's why I don't care about fame. I don't care about money. I don't think I'm better than the next person, because I'm a dirty old 50 rag myself. It is always stuff we got to clean out our closet. We all have drunk from brackets water. We need to understand we don't get caught up in a 2-story house. We don't need to get caught up in Mercedes-Benz. We don't need to get caught up in a Mustang. We don't need to get caught up in billions of dollars. We don't need to get caught up in winning world by power, having power, like all these world leaders, like all these dictators. But you have to understand, but when you did, and all these, and like Donald Trump and all that, when all these folks die and they got to answer to God, think that money and fame and power gonna get them. It's always, I don't care if you think man ain't gonna get you, but God got ways of bringing you to your reality, and He got ways of humbling you. When you fall in your place, and when your time comes, your expiration day comes, we all got to answer to God when we cross over. That's simple. From how we live this life, how we live, like Pastor McCullough said last week at my pop's funeral, at my pop's Larry funeral. When you live right, you die right. We don't understand. We all gonna cross over, and we all gonna leave this life. We all gonna live, and when we leave this life, you want to make sure that you got your life right. Because if you're not right with God, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna all answer, and that's the worst thing you don't want to do. Answer that you didn't live this life right. How you live it, how you gonna go out. So you don't want to go out. And whatever grudges you got, you need to get rid of the grudges, and you need to have peace with yourself when you have grudges or somebody did something to you. Pray about it. If they don't want to be forgiveness, you need to do your part, because when your body go cold, you know you'll be at peace. And that's why I learned not to hold grudges. You pray for them, and you wish them well, and you see him and you don't see him, and keep it moving. That's what I do. All the ones that's against me, I pray for them, forgive them, just don't deal with them more. But I see them and I don't see them, and stay away from them. That's what, and if there's someone here today that want to hear the word, that want the 5 steps of salvation, how can you be saved? If you got to first hear the word. You got to believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. And learn to live. And then once you learn those 5 steps, you will learn to live faithfully unto death. And that's in Ephesians 4:5. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. The Church of Christ, the church the Lord built in the Bible, that He established in the Bible, the Lord's church. And there's someone here today and you want to learn, if you want to get rid of that jealousy mindset in the toxic world we live in, those are the 5 steps. Hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. And once you learn those 5 steps, you will be added to the Lord's church, and you will be baptized. And baptism is a dipping. And that's all I want to say here today. May God bless.